They never put that warning on when you said give up smoking, I can assure you. But I pulled my own case and carried my own bags. And then the guy with a megaphone was challenging the BBC to come out and take some forensic documents off me related to corporate fraud in the City of London. And so the second in charge, I believe, of the BBC came out, and we had a brief chat over the barrier, and he invited me in. And so the crowd were quite spontaneous in shouting "hurrah!" And I went in and showed him, one was the forensic money trail document of the attorneys of law, and various documents linked to various corporate radio stations.
Okay.
Who are working incognito with those out of Finchley Road. Like Russia Today.
Oh, yes.
You've heard of them?
Yes.
Russia Today, the Palestine Telegraph, Press TV, all have their origins out of that address in Finchley Road. Work that out.
That is a curveball.
Well, it's a curveball because it shows who's running those radio stations. And it's not the Russian intelligence service, is it? It's ours, with Mossad.
Wow. That is...
exactly.
That is...
Because when you check the board of directors of those companies, these are the people that are taking the mick out of us. They're treating us like imbeciles. Because, say, most of the population would never have the chance to spend the time to research, to do the back trails of these companies and their directors. But once you do it, once you find the hornet's nest, the rat's nest in Finchley Road, it's easy.
Because, I mean, the way they've got it set up now is if there's these two opposing financial powerhouses. I mean, you've got the China, Russia and the rest of the BRICS versus the Western banking Ponzi scheme franchise, for want of a better way of putting it. But when you look at the money, I mean, for instance, between China and America, although it looks like there's a currency war going on at the moment, I mean, it's the same money men, as it always is, behind it. The Rothschild banksters and other certain families, and they've had their roots in China for a long time now. Is this just a bit of a show for the masses as they try to suck us into a world war in order to reset it, Gordon? What's your...
I dread to think of that. I dread to think of it because I was security cleared to work with nuclear weapons within my military career. Worked with the WE-177s, which were 15 kiloton, not 20 kiloton, and also massive laser-guided weaponry for the Air Force. And I dread to think what will happen in a major conflict ever again. But you're quite right. If you understand a little bit about history and you know where to look, and you can even use basic search engines, what you will find out is the Lord Rothschild, and the Rothschild family. They were the people who, via the HSBC Bank, funded the Anglo-Chinese War with Japan.
Yeah.
And it's great when you're supplying both sides because it's a win-win. And we did the same, supplying Iran and Iraq with weaponry. So much for our lovely, right honourable people. The trouble is that people like myself never get a platform to be able to confront the politician with documents because you're sidelined. You never get to the stage where people who own the major media, like the Murdochs and Richard Branson, or any of the people that run the Times, the Telegraph, the Express, these major newspapers will never give me the time of day, just like the BBC when I confronted them, is that when you can lay down a forensic trail from people like Mohammed Adnan Khashoggi in the mass arms trade, supplyment of to Iran and Iraq, people like myself never get a platform. They'll put the wing commander or air vice marshal, they'll stick him on because they say that he's the man that has the upper knowledge. But when you look at the scumbags that they've been dealing with, that's the way you follow it. You follow it from the very basics to understand how they've been using mercenaries, ex-SAS commanders, to ship weaponry to rebel factions to start trouble up, which would then it progresses to mass wars like they had in Sri Lanka, Sierra Leone, Chad, Niger, Sudan. It doesn't matter where they go. You need somebody to supply them. Have a look at all the videos that they show of these IS terrorists. Now, most people...
They're all in the latest American jeeps and boots and guns and uniforms. You couldn't make it up.
Where'd you get them from? They must have got an Aldi store there.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I mean, it's farcical.
It's a joke, isn't it?
It's
a joke, because most people see that without understanding logistical support. Because every round that is put into those guns has a marker and a maker's name. Every weapon is used has a registration number and has a source. Every vehicle was manufactured in a certain country. Somebody paid for it. There's an invoice. There's a paper trail.
Exactly.
And that's why paper trails are a very boring subject, but very interesting when you know who's involved.
Yeah, but not only that, Gordon. I mean, with that chemical farce that they've done in Syria now, even that was able to be traced back to a CIA source. So, I mean, everything, as you quite rightly said.
Well, we're the producers.
Yeah, everything.
Porton down in this country is where Dr. David Kelly worked.
Oh, we'll get into that now. Just for the listeners, or just to back up what Gordon is saying about how these wars are financed, again, I'd point you to Michael Rivero actually has done a great little documentary or picture of this. All wars are bankers' wars. That's a great one. I mean, again, Bill Still, he depicts how every war is financed by both sides. Going back the last 300 years, this scam has been going on. But we're at a time now, Gordon, where this Ponzi scheme is imploding on itself, isn't it? And I mean, this is why they're so desperate in the asset stripping that they do, and it's in order to keep this thing afloat. I mean, when you take into consideration the way that the Western banking system works, which is fractional reserve banking, just for our listeners, that means for every £1, the bank gets to create 10 out of thin air. But the last
that's right.
But
if you can hear a noise in the background, it's the Rottweiler just smashed the door down to get into a waterfall. Oh, I'm not going to argue with her.
No.
She's got bigger teeth than me.
But so we got this fractional reserve banking, but with that we got this paper derivatives market, which is waiting to blow up. Now, I can't help thinking that they're trying to kick it off in order to reset the whole thing, but I don't think they'll be able to, Gordon, because the work the likes of yourself have done and other researchers in this field has really exposed and lifted the sheets and exposed this for what it is, and it's absolutely corruption by psychopaths.
That's right. And I said, if your listeners want to understand, is to keep it simple.
Yeah.
Because when I try to explain to a lot of people, it goes over their head. They cannot believe that man that's just stood up in Parliament and all his cronies could be the people, the vile, thieving scum that I know that they are. Because people like me will never get to confront them and to lay it out to the people and to get an audience with the BBC or to go onto TV, ITV, or Radio Wales or anything. Is that people like myself that have that information that needs to be examined by a reasonably intelligent board, and then if they've got any contradictions to any of the documents, then I'll get down on my hands and knees and say, yes, you're 100% right. But no, I am 100% right, because before I even utter one word, I try to check every single detail, and I check it, and that's the way I was trained in the Air Force. Every time and every day that I worked in the Air Force, you sign an individual and collective paper trail for everything that you do, every nut and bolt that you put on, everything that you adjust. You have to do a paper trail. multi-million-pound aircraft plows itself into a hillside and kills 2 people on board, then there's a big financial and forensic trail. And that's why I've always worked my whole life.
Indeed.
And it's a good way to work.
Absolutely. Right. So, let me just tie it in for the audience. We got, from the Mag Thatcher government, all involved in arms sales. Let's bring it forward to modern times, where we got Tony Blair, weapons of mass destruction, trying to sell more bombs, trying to get more bullets, more funding for the military industrial complex. You've got Colin Powell in the EU, this little tube of washing powder, saying that we're all going to get done by anthrax. Let's go to Iraq, based on a false 9/11 attack. I mean, all these wars are mostly propagated on falsehoods, but primarily is to make profit. Now, this is where we go into David Kelly. Gordon, would you like to pick it up there?
Yeah, I've got a bit more understanding than most people because of the people that have contacted me, and I've got a very dear friend who is a very high professionally qualified civil engineer. He contacted me back in 2010 with some very delicate information. He shared it with myself and a guy called Peter Eyre, who writes a blog site, Eyre International. And this gentleman, I won't name him because he's covered by the Official Secrets Act, he worked with Rolls-Royce Nuclear in Derby. He's a patent designer. His qualifications are second to none. And he was involved with the transportation industry and the application of moving 20-foot ISO containers and their shipment. And he was approached by John Arnold Breedenkamp, who is a Rhodesian kleptomaniac, psychopath, ex-special forces guy from Rhodesia. And he was working incognito with the Thatchers and the Tory grandees, the money people, and the likes of the Rothschilds. And he was his business was with his brothers was not too well off financially, and he was approached by John Arnold Breedenkamp to use his machinery to load 20-foot ISO containers for the transportation in the arms industry, weaponry, munitions, and he was actually taken to Pelland Harbour, which is north of Pretoria. And there he was asked to be involved in a certain nefarious activity with nuclear weapons. Now, for your listeners, Pelland Harbour was the South African apartheid government, the military government's nuclear weapons research facility. And Dr. David Kelly had been there working with a guy called Wouter Besson. Now, from my sources, extensive chats to me, sometimes rings me 3 times a day, and he rang me yesterday. Now, that gentleman has given me the full overview of his involvement and his friends. His friends are in the very highest parts of the corridors of power in Westminster. And so that's why I can say with great conviction that I trust this man's word with my life. Not just because of his qualifications, but who he deals with, and who his friends were, who he grew up with. And that's where the inside information is fully accurate. Now, this gentleman told me, my source, that back in 1989, a young conservative, who would have been David Cameron, was requested to go with Dr. David Kelly and a guy called Sir Kenneth Warren to Pelland Harbour on a pre-arranged visit paid for by a sort of shell company in the United Kingdom, which was the Front Arms Corps in South Africa. And they paid for him to go and visit. That's David Cameron, our Right Honourable trustworthy Prime Minister to go to Pelendaba to arrange the removal of 9 20-kiloton completed battlefield-ready gravity-drop nuclear bombs. And they were to be removed from South Africa prior to the 1994 election and handover to the ANC communist government of Nelson Mandela. Now, this was all a hush-hush thing because nobody wanted to know that South Africa had actually manufactured with Israeli scientists these 9 remaining. There were 10. One was detonated off the south of little island just south of South Africa. And what happened was, from my source, he said that Dr. David Kelly, on the issuance of a UOR, signed by Margaret Thatcher on her last day in office, she didn't know what it was for. It was for a procurement from Astra Holdings to Arms Corps in South Africa of 3 cylinders to the value of, I don't know, 80, 90 million pounds. And that was the 3 nukes that were being purchased for the retake of Kuwait. Now, I am told by my source that Dr. David Kelly went to Pelendaba to arrange the transportation where these 9 nuclear bombs were fitted to transit cradles, which were then attached to parallel rails and floor bolted to the pans of 20-foot ISO containers, and then railed, the whole 9 of them in individual containers, were railed to Durban, where at Durban, Dr. David Kelly was authorized to hand over cash, which had been raised by a load of Tory grandees. I have some of their names, very important names. I'm not going to disclose them on here because I want those people to go to jail for 25 years. However, the cash was exchanged, and those 6 were sent to Chicago for decommissioning, and 3 were diverted to Oman, where they were offloaded, and they were put in a transportation storage facility, and those weapons were to be used as a retaliatory weapon if Saddam had used chemicals or bioagents on our UK and coalition forces in the retake of Kuwait. And I am told that after hostilities, the cessation of hostilities, Dr. David Kelly went back to then load those weapons up to onward ship them to Chicago for decommissioning, where the fissile material would be removed. And when you opened the containers, the weapons were gone. Whoa. 3 20-kiloton battlefield-ready gravity-drop nuclear bombs that were purchased by the Tories. Now, this was a massive fraud in the making, a cash fraud, because I am told what they intended to do was that the Tory grandees and other VIPs would raise cash, pay for it, and then overcharge the state, our government, for that procurement. So they were middlemen. And what they did was they obviously made a boatload of money each out of this deal, but things went wrong. When Dr. David Kelly opened up those containers in Oman and they were gone, who could say anything? Nobody. Who's going to say that they've lost 3 nukes? Poof. And so I'm told that the person that stole them was the orchestrator of the deal between Arms Corps and Astra Holdings, and that was John Arnold Breedenkamp, who lived a few doors away from the Thatcher home, family home. And so the information I've got is from somebody that's been involved. This is not conspiracy or hearsay. This is from people involved.
Indeed.
Now, I would like a politician to put me in front of a panel on a major media and ask me to elaborate on that in their presence, and for them to go before Q&A Prime Minister's questions and get this out in the open to the public who pay for those right honourable people because they are public servants.
Absolutely.
I am told by my source and by information you get off the internet that on the 25th of May 2009, one of those stolen, missing Conservative purchased nukes was detonated by North Korea. Now, if you know anything about the Nuclear Explosions Act of 2009, anybody that has any knowledge of a nuclear explosion in peacetime, not associated to war, is eligible to go to trial and face life imprisonment for causing a nuclear explosion. So, if my figures and my names are right, people like Tony Blair, David Cameron, and most of the senior government ministers would all go to jail for life because I have told them about this. And my source, by virtue of his profession and his qualifications and biography history involvement with John Arnold Breedenkamp, and letters that he holds between himself and Tony Blair, if this was to be made public, which I hope in a little way via your radio and your listeners, is to understand the filth that we have in government and what they're capable of doing. I put it to you.
Well, I can tell
you. Let any of your listeners contact Right Honourable Peter Hain and ask him about that missing nuclear warhead letter that was sent to him by Andrea Davison, where he put documents in his safe, and you're quite right about blackmail and how it can progress people in the corridors of power, because that's what it is. It's a tit-for-tat blackmail network of thieves.
Well, Gordon, I can tell you that this will go everywhere, my friend.
Well, I hope so.
Well, it will. It'll go to every country in the world. I mean, we have a strong base, and this will be made into listening for people who have not got access to the computer within the community. I mean, we'll put this one on little DVDs and put them through letterboxes and everything. That you're going to be heard.
Well, this is why I say to you is that when I get contacted by people who ask me to go on a radio show, well, I'm certainly not scared of anybody in my life. Mm-hmm. And I've been threatened by, I've been shot at a few times in my life. I didn't like it. Mind you, I didn't want to be there in the first place.
Yeah.
They sent me. And so when it comes to expressing my wish to protect the people of my country, mm-hmm. not a politician who wants to make a couple of million, that's not my objective. My objective is to protect the people of my country, and that's what I signed up for many years ago when I was a young, fit man. And everybody that puts a uniform on in the lower ranks when you join up, they also have that belief. And what these politicians have done to me is they ripped my soul out over the last 14 years of my life, because I fully understand how naive I was as a young man who put a uniform on and went to many far distant shores. But I always took the belief that my country was the saviour of theirs, to protect the weak and the meek and the mild. And I've learned all we were being used for was to manipulate business for certain politicians and bankers. That's how you live and learn, isn't it? Is that knowledge is an amazing stage in your life where you go through and you reflect on your life, mm-hmm. and you can see where you made the mistakes. I will not make the same mistakes as Dr. David Kelly. I will make sure that this material is covered, duplicated, and held by others, and that's what I've done.
Absolutely, and you're quite
right. That's probably what's kept me safe.
Well, maybe. I mean, we're duty bound to do this, Gordon. I mean, the truth does sting a bit, and
yeah, it hurts.
I mean, to find out that you've been lied to all your life, it is a bit of a shocker. And for anyone who's in any doubt that they have been lied to all their life, take a little bit of time out, do the research, follow the leads up that Gordon and I have spoken about this evening. I mean, this is serious, and it's coming to a crunch time now, Gordon.
Well, let me tell you something. When I was I must have been about 14 years of age, I went to school at Coidiva Secondary Modern School. And my girlfriend then, who then became my wife, she had a friend. And that friend lived about 15 houses away from the school, Coidiva Secondary Modern School. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if you remember Rorke's Drift. Remember Rorke's Drift?
I've seen the film Zulu,
in
yeah.
Natal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the South Wales borderers fought off the Zulus.
That's correct, yeah.
And when I when I was coming home holding my girlfriend's hand, and she said, I just want to pop in there. It was a Fielding's house. Now I went in, and I sat like a dutiful young man. I sat with my hands folded, but I was looking at their cabinet, and inside that cabinet was a box, a metal box, and it was open. And I'm not lying to you, because I looked at it, and I couldn't believe it. It was the Victoria Cross of John Williams. Do you understand that? His name was Fielding, but he fought under the name, or he signed up as an underage. He actually lied about his age. And I asked my girlfriend's friend, I said, can I have a look? She opened the cabinet, and I rested it in my hand. And I understood what bravery was about. Do you understand? When people face things when they don't think that they're going to survive, as most of those brave people did at Rorke's Drift. Mm-hmm. And I've lived with that little bit through my mind about touching something where honour was involved. And that's what I've done. Now, when this comes out to your listeners, maybe any of them would like to query any of my information, and trust me, they will wet themselves, because they will find out that these right honourable gentlemen that have worked their way up through Freemasonic lodges to the higher degrees, that have been sort of goaded into taking positions and then blackmailed to work with a bigger establishment, that these people have taken us for idiots for far too long. And it's about time that genuine people who would want peace and prosperity for their children and their children's children to confront these politicians and not be scared of anything, because most of them that I've come across are all there for their own lining of their own pockets.
Absolutely. And you can't call them leaders or men even. They're the weakest kind of people that society can breed, and that's what these money people want. They need these weak, manipulative, cowardly men, don't they, in order to perpetrate their agenda.
Well, I started the ball rolling. I've got a very brave couple of people in Anglesey, and one of the companies that I've confronted by way of various web blogs and written material is a company called Anglesey Mining PLC.
All right.
And they operate out of the Paris mine, supposedly, and that company was founded in 1984. And do you know how many ounces of ore they've mined in that 30-odd years?
Go on.
Not one teaspoonful.
Good grief! And I bet.
And they have cash burned hundreds of millions of pounds, and nobody said a word. Why? Because the board of directors are linked to Anglesey County Council.
Well, that doesn't surprise me, but the fact
that
I'm
just saying, your listeners can understand that when you find out the forensics of a company and be able to dismantle its directors and their history of running virtual mining companies, multiple. And how many companies that they are getting salaries for every month and never having mined anything, then you'll understand about the word frustration.
Well, this is what's boggled my mind here, Gordon. I mean, you can understand the corrupt, greedy, soulless politician. I can get that, but to put up a fictitious company and to not even mine a spoonful of ore or anything, I mean, the cheek of it. I mean, and these are the people who absolutely torture the working class or anyone, who don't pay taxes. Right. They terrorise us, and then they got the gall to come on. As you say, it's sickening, and
that's right, it's sickening.
Yeah.
If you looked at, say, my main concern with Anglesey Mining PLC was my research into its directors, and what I found out was that on Anglesey, the actual Paris mine is the shaft that was sunk in between 1989 and 1991 was called the Morris shaft. Now, I did the research on the directors going back in 2007, 2008, because I followed one who was linked to my partner's fraud in South Africa. His name was Malcolm Alec Byrne, and he was on the board of directors, the past board of directors of Anglesey Mining PLC. He was a con artist in South Africa. Now, the Morris shaft was named after one of the original directors called Dr. Hugh Morris, and he was involved in the nuclear industry.
Right.
Now, if you know anything about the Magnox decommissioned nuclear power station, twin reactors there, that it was decommissioned in 1989 to 1991, and they sunk that shaft, and the company that sunk it was a company called Cementation Mining, who worked for Sellafield, the nuclear power industry. So where did they put all the waste from the decommissioned Magnox North twin reactor?
Go on.
Well, I maintain that that mine shaft was sunk purely to store either the high, medium, or low-grade waste of that mine, of that power station. Because if anybody does any research on the internet and has a look at Sellafield and have a look at the video footages that have just been made available, well, I'll say just been made, but they've been out for a while now, of the nuclear fuel rod dams that are all crumbling and falling to pieces, it's a nuclear disaster in the waiting. Now, I maintain that the scumbag con artist directors running Anglesey Mining PLC, and have been for over 30 years, that have never mined anything, are a front cover for that shaft, which is a storage facility of nuclear waste.
It sounds like a ticking time bomb.
Well, it is. It is. Not for the people who have made hundreds of millions in the power industry. No, they'll be long dead. Do you understand? But, as I maintain, is that because I've done shaft exams with my life in the mining industry, give me an opportunity. If the mine is flooded, as some people have said it is, then they could have sealed off the 1,000-meter offshoot galleries and had it a storage facility made there, and then blocked off that offshoot gallery. And then, if the mine had filled up with water, surface water, that would have been an ideal protective guise to stop anybody looking there. But if there was a catastrophic fall of ground where any of the plastic drum containers opens up to the water, the groundwater, and it seeps into the channel between, or the Irish Channel, and that gets into the groundwater, you're talking the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. And that's why I've done a confrontation. I hope, maybe with a bit of assistance from yourself, I'm setting up a PowerPoint presentation for the people of Anglesey, with people in Anglesey. His name is John Andrews. You can find him if you want to.
Yeah.
And we are setting about to highlight these concerns with the facts, with the forensic documents, to confront the Anglesey County Council, the Welsh Area Authority and Government, the police and the Board of Directors, and I will lay it out in a PowerPoint presentation, A to Z, exactly what these people have been up to, and their cohorts that operate out of 788 790 Finchley Road in London.
Well, we'd love to have you down to Port Albert with us, Gordon. Any time that you can make it, we can accommodate you there. And I mean, I'd be delighted to.
I come from Cwmbran. That was my hometown. I was born in Newport, but I was raised in Cwmbran. But my sister lives in Risca, and it would give me great pleasure to come and meet some of the people that really want to know what scum we've got in government.
Yeah.
I'm not scared to approach anybody. It doesn't matter which politician. While I was in South Africa, I was 10 years at the University of Transkei as a facilities engineer.
Yeah.
And at that time, my now late wife was the executive dining room manager. And when it came to serving some of the dignitaries who attended the lunches and ceremonies, I had an opportunity to meet some good people. One of them was Nelson Mandela. And I was invited to his home with my missus, my late wife, and I spoke with him many times. Nelson Mandela Dick Bota, P.W. Bota, F.W. de Klerk, the Kennedy family, the British High Commissioners, politicians from all over the world, everybody that was invited to quite a large modern university, 5,500 students. I had a great opportunity to meet some good people, and I can assure you, having spoken to Nelson Mandela, he wasn't a terrorist. He was only a terrorist to the people who were controlling his people and slaughtering them at will.
Yeah, well, we'd be delighted to have you, Gordon. As I say, we can talk about this off air and arrange for you to come down and do that presentation, which we'll duly record and get out. I mean, we'll make this a priority in order to get this information out there. I mean, it's absolutely vital, not only for people to understand the corruption, but the depth of the corruption is absolutely staggering.
Well, it's industrial. It's industrial scale fraud, theft, money laundering, and selective, what they call insider trading. That is where directors of companies, public listed companies, are given optional shares in those companies to then trade them, purchase and sell at will. Instead of having extended salaries, they get optional shares. And these people are running insider trading rings. And so what they do is they talk the price up and they talk the price down. They buy and sell when the price is spiked, and then they purchase it when it's at rock bottom. And that's how they operate and make hundreds of millions of pounds extracting the urine. Nothing to do with mining. It's all about fraud, theft and money laundering. That's what it is.
And in every commodity, it must be. I mean,
every. Yeah. These are not real gold mines. Some of them have been historical mines, like the Clogau gold mine. Do you know where that is?
No, I don't.
In Anglesey, the Clogau gold mine. That's another massive fraud that's been run at the moment by one of the old Lonro directors. His name is David Anthony Lenigas. He's part of the network working with those two SAS commanders.
Right.
Aldwyn James Glendining Wright and Mark Blackburn, who were both Kroll, senior Kroll directors. You know Kroll Security?
Yeah, they're the private mercenaries, aren't they? Basically.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so, all I am is a guide to show people the filth, and then leave it to justice systems to, if there is such a thing in this country, is to bring these people to task. And that's what I hope, with a little bit of pressure and a little bit of support, where instead of watching Coronation Street or Emmerdale or something like that, is that people could confront a politician in a surgery and say, I heard that guy on the radio, I've met him, and he seems a genuine guy. He seems to have a lot of pride in his country and his service for his country. Now, if there's any substance to this man's allegations, why don't you face him in front of the viewers on the BBC or ITV? You answer him, where you can then be held to account.
Well, indeed, and
because all they do is hide behind their constituency MP privileges by not replying to you, if you understand.
I do understand that, and we'll have to pin them, as you say, in his surgery with a camera in his face, if necessary.
That's right. That's the way I've done it. It's not nice to record people without their knowledge, and I've never had that intention of doing it as a sneaky git. But what I did do was, when I saw that these people were lying to me through their teeth, I made sure that other people knew that I was recording it, and according to the law, you're quite allowed to do that.
Absolutely.
And so, when I've reflected on that, and I've emailed them and said, do you want to listen verbatim to what you told me? Because you will go to jail for 25 years.
That's right.
Not just for fraud, but you're going to go to jail for treason to the people of this country. You are a public servant. And they've wet themselves.
Well, they're all committing treason.
That's what they are. They are committing treason to the people of this country, who give them the opportunity to work for the people.
Yeah,
not for themselves or a banker.
They're all interlinked on the private side. I mean, I'll just give you a little 2 minutes of what happened to me and our local MP here, who was Howell Francis, and it related to the child support agency. They were had deductions from earnings order, and they were in my pay, absolutely taken. I think it was 80 quid a week, I'd never been in front of a judge. I'd never had contact with the child support agency. The child which they would charge me for had always lived with me, right? It was a complete extortion and robbery. Now, when I asked our local MP, because like anyone else, you assume with such a cock-up that you'd be able to sort it out, no problem. You try to go the legit route. And I went to him, and of course he fobbed me off, as they do, and my research started then. Now, I was able to do a bit of forensic research myself, and I discovered that the Labour Party and the Child Support Agency, and in actual fact the Magistrate Court who had issued the deductions from pay order, they were all owned by the same people in the private. And it went further. For each deduction, and this is for anyone who's out there listening at the moment paying child support, for each deduction, the Magistrate Court that ordered the deduction gets an 8% kickback for each and every payment. Now, it gets even better, because if you're working for a company who is registered with the Payroll Alliance, then they have got shares in the Child Support Agency too. But here's the kicker. None of the money goes to the child. It all goes to our favourite money laundering bank, the HSBC.
Exactly. And that's why I said to you, is when I showed the BBC executive the forensic money trail conducted by two attorneys at law, the bank involved was HSBC Bank.
Yeah, they are the go-to bank. I mean, and I must admit that I secretly recorded him a couple of years later, and well, it was 2 years later actually, and I asked him outright, was he aware that the Labour Party was trading in the name of Alistair Darling, I believe it was at the time.
Yes.
Because of course he was a diplomatic status at the time, so they were able to get away with tax and everything. Well, he went white as a sheet. He told me that he was unaware of that. I asked him whether he had any bit, would he look into it, or if he thought it was of any interest. But yes, these people, they deny everything. I mean, the fact that the whole country is bankrupt, and we'd all set up with bonds from the start, and these politicians, MPs, and these representatives of Parliament, they get to control these funds, and absolute fraud, top to bottom. And I mean, here's one for you. They've printed more money the last 2 years than the previous 200 with this fiat quantitative easing. It's absolutely farcical, Gordon. And I mean, the fraud, just to keep it going, is getting absurd now, and it's got to stop. And
well, that's why I'm saying to yourself and the listeners, your listeners.
Yeah.
You know, if they were to use the proceeds of crime recovery, I could save this country hundreds of billions of pounds, because I have the complete forensic money trail to where that money has been moved to.
Yeah.
Because this is nothing to do with legitimate business and hiding or being classing it as tax avoidance. No, this is money laundering, including the mafia.
Well,
now I'm going to tell you something to you and your listeners now. Back, I mean, you'd have Tessa Jowell, MP Tessa Jowell,
yes.
Labour.
Yes.
Right. Her husband is David Mackenzie Donald Mills, and he was brought before the Italian courts because he had set up over 100 shell companies for Silvero Berlusconi, the Italian convicted fraudster Prime Minister, and the mafia. And he set up those companies at 788 790 Finchley Road.
Well,
so, this is the Labour MP's husband. Now, I wrote to Tessa Jowell, I said, how come your Labour Party is not investigating your husband and those companies and 788 790 Finchley Road? She didn't answer. I didn't expect her to. But all that is on file, and that's where these people are all, or should do, if there's any justice, and that your listeners can bear witness to that, because I've made it public, and it's been made public on many emails where they're all pumping themselves because they know I'm right, because I've done the forensic trail of companies and who the directors were. including Berlusconi. So I know I'm 100% right. They need to be confronted and sent to jail.
Absolutely.
You're talking about the biggest financial scandal, criminal scandal, ever in this country.
I'd say in the world. Yes. I'd say in the Western, in this Western banking scheme, everywhere from the Federal Reserve. I mean, any central bank within the Western franchise of central banks, all the way up to the IMF and all the other ones in between, are absolutely complicit in this. It's all fraud.
Well, you know yourself. David Cameron's great-great-grandfather was the chief director of HSBC Bank.
Yeah, well.
Or didn't you know?
I wasn't aware of that, but...
well, there you are.
There we are.
I'm telling you, if you can check it up. His great-great-grandfather was the chief executive of HSBC Bank in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Now, he also operates a Panamanian family account called Blairmore Holdings, and they have been linked to asset stripping the complete financial empire of a guy called Gerald Carroll, and that's on the record as well. The biggest financial fraud of a corporate entity in the United Kingdom, run by the very father of David Cameron, the late father, Ian Donald Cameron.
There we are.
There you are. This is the man that we hold Right Honourable Prime Minister. God help us. God help us.
It's shocking. And it shouldn't be, but it is. You can't help but be, when faced with it, as you say, this is all backed up with evidence. I mean, there's other... it's insurmountable. The truth is there, and I mean, they can never.
People.
I'm staggering for words here to try to describe the magnitude of it. I mean, it's incredible, Gordon.
Look, as I said, I'm not somebody that's had an exceptional educational career. However, I was qualified to work with nuclear weapons, pick them up and handle them. I mean, I'm an engineer, work with complex gas turbine engines, hydraulic systems, instrument and autopilot test trolley. I said my engineering experience, I was trained by the best in the world. Now, I'm not somebody that would stand up on a podium and spout something like this if I didn't have any material that would back it up.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's where I've challenged these people. I said, if you think that you can qualify me as a conspiracy theorist, stand up with me, I'll bring the documents, I'll stick them in front of you, and then you tell me that I'm talking shit. Let's try it. But they will run away, and that's what they do. They don't want the truth to come out because it will collapse their whole empire of lies.
Yeah.
But that's what I hope some of your listeners will do, is get a better idea of how we can go about by confrontation. Not violence or anything like that. You don't need that.
No.
These people have produced their own prosecution material.
Well,
lovely.
When, as I say, the courts and everything are corporations now, and I mean, the essence of common law itself is the right to have a jury of your peers, and that's been taken away from us in these secret courts, and just the cost to get to a trial takes it away from the common man, and then you add the fact of the legalese and all the other tricks they play with the words and how they switch jurisdictions and whatnot.
Well, I understand that you can use common law in a court.
Well, but basically,
you can express your wishes to have a trial by jury.
Yes,
and
indeed.
You can ask the judge, does she say her oath to the Crown or under common law?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly, but I've got the book here, and it's a book about common law and how you can express to the legal fraternity that you can ask the presiding judge, does he swear the oath under common law or under the Crown?
Well, we're at a stage now where the corruption is of such a magnitude that the laws have gone out. The laws have literally gone out of the window to these people. They not well. it just doesn't affect them. I mean, they ignore it at every point. But there has been mechanisms placed within our constitution through the Bill of Rights and the Magna Carta and things like this, which are still on the books today. That's the right to a fair jury. Now, along with that is when a government and your representatives are no longer representing the people, then the people are duty bound to form grand juries and common law courts to hold these people to account. These mechanisms have been forgotten, but they are there, and these are the kind of things we are working on now. There are other mechanisms, as you quite rightly pointed out, but I mean, first of all, they try to hush this up and bury it. I mean, most of our listeners will be aware of the fact that through the fractional reserve banking and all the rest of the fictional fiat-based currency and whatnot, they would know they would know the history over the last 300 years, and where we are now, there's simply too many digits on the screen for assets on the planet. Now, this is where your information is vital, because it's a vital piece of the jigsaw, which I must admit I wasn't aware of until this evening. In order to keep this fictional, keep all these zeros going, they've had to make stuff up. They've had to make mining reserves up with tons of mines in and that. I mean, it's clear to me now, Gordon. But just for our listeners, I mean, this is what's happened. I mean, through the fraud, there is so many digits on the screen. There is not enough assets on the planet. So in order to facilitate the fraud, they're just making shit up.
Well, that's it. If you understand how to dismantle the AIM Rule 26 admission documents, some of them are 500-600 pages.
Yeah.
If you know where to look with a bit of mining experience, you know how to check the past involvement of directors with other companies. And when you look through the JORC reserves of what they say is below the ground, or where they're going to recover this, what they do is they say, based upon a geological survey and drillings, they will say that there is, say, 500 million tons of a certain grade which contains silver, gold, copper, zinc, tin, and it has an estimated value of, say, 400 billion pounds. Now, that's in the ground. I mean, if you could step out in your back garden, you could say you've got the same under there.
Yeah.
Because what they're saying is it's ore in the ground which has yet to be assayed and milled to produce a product. Because what they're doing is they're given an estimated value, which then they use in a document to instigate investors pumping money into that company in the belief that these are genuine people and they're going to mine it. That's not their intention at all. Their intention is one way. It's to steal the little investors' money and then to move it to subsidiaries which are in offshore locations. That's what they're doing. And then have a jolly good life with a magnificent salary and make even more money with insider trading. That's the realities of what they're doing. Not one company. As I said, in my records, in my archive of library that I've got, there must be 1,300-400 companies. Now there must be thousands more which I haven't yet got to, because my sort of exposés have it takes a long time to get the material, but it's the magnitude of what I'm doing, and it's on my own. Now, what I've been given is an opportunity on various radio stations to highlight a little bit. What we need is a panel of people that have got a common purpose to express our concerns where they're brought before somebody that will put it on a major media. Because when you start to highlight the magnitude of this fraud, they all run away. Because they want the same lies to progress for generations to come. And it can't. It can't for the sake of all the people in this country, not just Wales.
That's right. I mean, a fiat-based currency, it usually has a lifespan of about 26 years. This one's 50 years overdue. Now, each time they've needed to do to reset, they've manufactured a depression, or they've had to do a couple of wars. I mean,
that's right.
I mean, so this is where we're at now. We're kind of at the end of the fiat-based cycle, and they are desperately trying to manufacture something in order to reset this thing and all get off a hook. I don't think they're going to be able to do it, Gordon.
If I refer back to Dr. David Kelly, Dr. David Kelly was found on a hillside with his wrist slashed, and he'd had a slight overdose of a normal prescription of cocodamol. Now, those things in itself would not have killed him.
No.
So he was murdered, and he was murdered because he had the information on those 3 missing nuclear weapons.
And just for
now, I say this on the radio.
Yeah, well,
I say this on the radio.
I'll back you up there, Gordon, because just for the listeners, if they'd like to follow this up, the amount of doctors and support that's come out for Dr. David Kelly, that's out there on the record, saying that it would be absolutely impossible for these injuries to inflict a mortal wound. Absolutely impossible. Yeah. I mean, that thing stinks. But
but it's not just that. You have to understand the reason why they killed him. And the reason they had to kill him was if it was made known that a bunch of conservative, silver spoon, snot-nosed thieving gits had managed to lose 3 purchased nuclear weapons, which were then onward sold to our government at greatly inflated price, then they had to kill him. And that's the reason why they put a security ban on all his documents for 70 years. Why? Why did they put a security block on all his documents for 70 years? I tell you, they'll be dead. They'll be dead like picking Jimmy Savile.
That's right.
All of them. All the cronies.
Yeah.
And what even gets me worse is that the money trail for that, the 3 nuclear weapons and the kickback into the conservative coffers is recorded in Hansard. And it's Hansard, June the 22nd, 1993, starting from column 197 into who was the donor of 17.8 million, which went into a near empty Tory account for them to be enabled to fight the 1992 general election. And the donor was John Arnold Breedenkamp, and he was the go-between and the orchestrator of those 3 nuclear weapons. And that's where they got themselves tied up in a knot, because they know I'm right, because I've got that from my source, and that's where I've pushed it all over the world as best as I could, even going and speaking about it at Trafalgar Square. It's there, it's on that video. I put my money where my mouth is. Anybody want to take me to court, including my security service, to whom I swore allegiance to my government and to the Queen. However, I've changed my mind a little bit as I've got older. But I owe it to my people. The people of Wales, my country, the people of England, Scotland and Ireland. They need to know some of this, the filth.
Yeah.
The filth of these people. The Right Honourable Eton-trained universities, the Bullingdon Boy Club, all these, the Monday Club, the select few who think that they are so intelligent and we're all stupid that we sit most of our days watching Jeremy Kyle and the rest of the soaps. They think that we are idiots. Well, it's about time that a few of your listeners understood